Welcome to Reframing the Membrane, Crossing Boundaries, where we advocate for actionable solutions for improving overall mental health and wellness by examining the challenges and resources affecting people and access to care. Each episode takes listeners through lived experiences and evidence-based research, providing practical strategies to build resilience and advocate for mind, body, and spirit well-being. Thank you for joining us as we engage with the community, health professionals, advocates, and individuals sharing their experiences. Before we get started, the content of this production may be emotionally challenging. The production will aim to inform you in advance when potentially activating material will be filmed or discussed. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Kapri, and today we're talking about living a value-driven life. Have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions? Or perhaps you're constantly trying to fix what feels wrong in your life, be it anxiety, sadness, or a general sense of being stuck? It's a common experience and completely understandable. After all, no one likes to suffer. We often seek to eliminate discomfort, and for problems that feel external to us, like the rock in your shoe, that strategy works perfectly. When you remove the rock, it solves the problem. But what about difficulties that originate internally, such as painful thoughts, feelings, memories, or sensations? People often seek therapy or self-help materials because they are experiencing some sort of suffering, and they want to get rid of this suffering. The challenge is these painful internal difficulties are a part of us. Wherever we go, they tend to be present. They aren't really like a rock that we can simply remove and leave behind. Often, the more effort we put into trying to get rid of these parts of ourselves and our internal experience, the more room they take up in our lives. Now, I invite you to take a moment and reflect with me. Think about a specific painful thought, feeling, memory, or sensation that you've struggled to get rid of. Just one. What have you tried to do to get rid of this painful experience? Think broadly. Therapy, medication, willpower, self-criticism, self-help books, distraction, avoidance, substance use, etc. How well have those strategies aimed at getting rid of suffering worked? Did they reduce your suffering in the short term? Over time, have they significantly reduced your suffering in the long term? What has been the cost of these strategies? What have you missed out on? Or what energy have you expended? If you weren't focused on getting rid of this suffering, what would you want to be focused on instead? What would you want to make important in your life? So, what do we know for sure? You are going to experience pain in your life. Sadly, it's an inescapable part of being human. The more our lives become oriented around avoiding what we don't want, the less they're focused on what we do want. You may have noticed in your own life, maybe you found that you're spending so much energy trying to move away from the painful stuff that you've really lost sight of what it is you want to be moving forward. A psychological approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, says that the important choice is not whether you're going to feel pain. That's an inevitable part of life. Instead, the real choice is, what are you going to focus your efforts and energy around, your pain or something else? So this modality suggests that the something else is values. And that's what we'll be focusing on for the rest of this episode. More in a minute.
Are you ready to make a difference in your community? In our Speak Out Advocacy series, we're here to empower you to use your voice for change. Whether improving access to mental health care, reducing stigma, or shaping important social policies, this series provides the tools to create a lasting impact. If advocating for better care, breaking down barriers, or transforming mental health services speaks to your heart, this is the perfect space to learn and take action. Do you have a topic you're passionate about or need support advocating for yourself or others? We'd love to hear from you. Text the show to share your thoughts. Just check the details in the show notes. Together, let's build a community that fosters change. Keep enjoying Reframing the Membrane.
Our focus today isn't about trying to feel good all the time or eliminating all suffering. Instead, it's focused on helping you live well because a well lived life is about much more than just avoiding pain. It's about connecting with what you find meaningful and rewarding, giving you a sense of purpose and helping you to thrive and flourish. The word values can mean many different things. Sometimes you might use it to talk about your sense of right or wrong. That goes against my values, for example. At other times, it might mean areas of life that are important to you, like family, work, or your community. I really value this relationship. Sometimes people talk about values as being more like goals, things they want to achieve, like being a parent or making money. While none of these ways of talking about values is wrong, in this discussion, we're going to talk about it from a different perspective and lens. Values aren't objects you have or things you can achieve. They're more about how you are living, what your actions are in the service of, rather than just what you are doing. They are qualities you want to embody within your actions. Here are a few ways that some therapists describe values. Values are about being proud of how you have lived your life. Values are how you are living when you are living a meaningful life. Values are ways of living that are meaningful. Values are what living a well lived life means for you personally. Values are the qualities you want to embody with your actions. And values are what you choose to make important in your life through your actions. Another way might be values are what you want your life to stand for. And values reflect the kind of person you'd want to be as you move through this life. Critically, values are directions, not destinations. Values are not actions you can complete or finish. They're more like directions rather than destinations. For example, we wouldn't say I value being a parent, since being a parent is something you can accomplish, so that's more of a goal. Nor would we say I value family, since family isn't a behavior. Instead, we might say something like I value loving, caring for my family, or playfully engaging with my kids. It's the loving and caring or playfully engaging that's the value. Your values are reflected in how you show up and how you spend your time and energy. They're the qualities you bring to the activities you do and what your efforts are in the service of. For example, if you valued being supportive and caring in your relationships, you might choose to go to your niece's basketball game. But it's not just about going to the basketball game. Values aren't just about what you are doing, but also about how you are doing them and why. Moving toward your values may mean being intentional about putting your phone away and really attending to the game as a way to move you toward the value of being a supportive and caring person to your niece. Your values are your own. The same actions, such as going or not going to a basketball game or a friend's party, could reflect a different value for different people. For instance, someone might go to a party to be a friendly person and make others feel welcome, while another might go to be an adventurous person even if they feel anxious. Yet another might stay home to prioritize being healthy by getting enough sleep. As you can see, everybody's values are different. Values aren't about what you think is right or wrong. In fact, there are no right or wrong values. One of the great things about values is that you get to choose what you value. Now, let's dive into some practical exercises you can do, even right now, to connect with your own values. These aren't about discovering some authentic values buried deep within you, but rather about choosing them. Values are chosen at least as much as they are discovered. I'm going to read a list of words, and as I say each word, I want you to mentally sort them into 3 categories for your life. The first category is values that I want to make very important in my life. The second, values that I want to make somewhat important. And third, values that I wouldn't want to make very important in my life. So very, somewhat, and I wouldn't want to make very important in my life are the 3 categories that we're working with. We're not asking what you think is possible, what you're currently valuing, or even what you think you should value. Instead, we're asking if you were totally free to choose, what values would you want to make important in your life? When you think about what kind of person you most want to be, Which words would describe you? What qualities would you need to live a well-lived, meaningful life? Take your time with each one, sorting it into one of those three mental categories. The first is accepting, adaptable, adventurous, always growing, appreciative, authentic, bold, builder, committed, communal, compassionate, competent, connected, courageous, courteous, creative, curious, dependable, disciplined, emotional, expert, free, friendly, fun, generous, gentle, gracious, hardworking, healthy, helpful, honest, humorous, impactful, inclusive, independent, intimate, fair, kind, knowledgeable, loving, loyal, moderate, moral, open, passionate, patient, peaceful, persistent, playful, powerful, present, quiet, rational, relaxed, respectful, responsible, risk-taking, romantic, secure, simple, spiritual, spontaneous, thoughtful, traditional, unique, virtuous, or whimsical. Now, from the values you put in the very important group, silently choose your top 10. And finally, if you could only choose 3 of them to focus on right now, which 3 would describe the sort of person you most want to be? If you're not sure, choose the 3 that you're most interested in exploring further. And if you need more time, go ahead and pause and come back. I want you to take some time to reflect on these questions, either in your mind or by jotting them down. What did you notice as you were choosing which values you'd want to make important in your life? What thoughts showed up as you were sorting the values? What feelings that you have? Looking at all the values that you categorized as most important ones, do you notice any themes or similarities among them? Are there overarching values that seem to encompass several of those you ranked as very important? Look at your top 3 values. What do you think would be different in your life if you were really living out those values? What would you be doing differently? And what impact would that have on you and others? If you knew it was possible to live a life where you really embodied those top 3 values, would you choose that? What difficult thoughts, feelings, or sensations would you be willing to have if it meant that you could live a life that was in the service of those 3 values? And what does this exercise tell you about next steps you'd like to take, or what you want to explore next? More in a minute.
The Reframing the Membrane Crossing Boundaries podcast is provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to replace professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor does it substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health clinician. Always consult your physician before deciding about your physical or mental health.
Sometimes when people start looking for what might be most important to them, they only look at peak experiences or huge life events, but often it's easier to find values in the simpler moments of life. Psychologists call these sweet spots. These are moments where, on the surface, it may not look like you're doing anything special. Maybe it's when you go for a walk with your dog or your favorite trail. Maybe it's having a spontaneous dance party with your kids in the kitchen. It may be something as simple as gardening by yourself. Although they may be simple moments, sweet spots embody some of the qualities you want more of in your life. Maybe part of what makes walking the dog special or sweet is that you're very present or committed when you do it. The spontaneous dance parties might bring out a playfulness or a loving quality that feels important to you. Examining these sweet spots where values already reside might give you some clues about which qualities or values you want to bring into the rest of your life. Let's take a moment to explore what values you might find in a sweet spot in your life. When you think of a sweet spot like we described, see if anything comes to mind. Is there a specific time, place, or activity in your life that you think might be a sweet spot? If one doesn't immediately come to mind, think of a time when you feel a sense of simple tenderness or contentment, a time where you like who you are or what you're prioritizing in that moment. Once you have a specific memory in mind, close your eyes if you're able to do so and feel safe, and picture that scene for a minute or two, like you're watching a movie. Focus on yourself in the scene. Notice what you're doing, feeling, experiencing, and making important in that moment. Now, open your eyes and reflect. How do you feel toward the you that was in the scene? Do you like that person? What was the you in that scene like? Imagine the you in that scene was a character in a movie or a book. List 5 qualities that would describe that character. What was important to the you in that scene, based on how they choose to spend their time and how they were behaving? What did they care about and what mattered to them? What would it be like if you were more like the you in that sweet spot scene in your everyday life? What difference would that make to you and those around you? What does this exercise tell you about which values might be important to you and how you want to live? There tend to be particular areas of life that many people find important. These are value domains, and these are the arenas where your values are enacted. This exercise will help you to examine your values across several domains. You may not feel like all these areas are important to you, and that's fine. There are no right or wrong answers here. This is about reflecting on questions that might help you and exploring what you might choose to value. I'm going to list some common domains. As I go through them, think about what you want to stand for in each area of your life, how you want to live and behave in these domains, how you'd like to relate to others and yourself, and what you hope to achieve in each area. So the first is aesthetics, art, beauty, creativity. How do you want to engage with or contribute to the beauty and creativity in the world? This may be through art, music, literature, or your own personal environment, such as your garden. What are you like when you're engaged in this arena of your life? Education, learning, and personal development. What matters to you about education and learning? How would you want to approach learning and growing as a person? Community, citizenship, society. What kind of world do you want to be a part of, and how would you choose to contribute to that larger community? How would you want to impact your community, your neighborhood, cultural group, society, or nation? Now let's consider the domain of the environment, nature, and the planet. What is important to you about how you interact with the larger environment or the planet? What about family, kinship, and relatives? Other than your partner or spouse or kids, who is in your family? What kind of relationships do you want to have with those who make up your family? Who do you want to be in their lives? How do you want to be with them? And what about health and well-being? How would you choose to take care of your body and health? What qualities would you want to embody that are in service of health? Let's consider friendships and social life. What sort of friend do you want to be? What friendships is it important to cultivate? How would you like to act towards your friends? And what kind of social life matters to you? What about intimacy, romance, partners, and marriage? What kind of partner or spouse do you want to be? What kind of relationship do you want to be a part of? What sort of partnership do you want to build? And what kind of person do you want to be in a relationship? The next domain is leisure, recreation, fun, and play. At your best, what are you like when you're having fun or at leisure? Spirituality, religion, connection. Think about something larger than yourself, whether it's a sense of God, nature, love, or some greater unknown. Do you find it important or meaningful? What kind of person do you want to be when it comes to spirituality or things that transcend the material world? How about parenting and nurturing? What sort of parent do you want to be? Which qualities would you most want your children to see in you? What kind of relationships do you want to build with them? And work, career, or vocation, what qualities do you want to bring into your work environment? Rather than focusing just on what you're doing, consider what you want your time at work to be in service of. Now, for each domain, mentally note a brief description of your values that define that area. For example, to be a caring partner, or to never stop learning, or to deepen my relationship with nature. Then, rate how important each domain is to you right now, from 0, not important, to 10, very important. Finally, give each domain a rating according to how successfully you have lived your life in accordance with this value in the past month. Again, on a scale of 0, not at all well, to 10, very well. Finally, reflect on these questions. Did you notice any significant differences between what you are currently regarding as important and what you would choose to make important? Was there any relationship between how satisfied you are feeling about a given area of life and how important you are currently making it? Do you have any sense of what would need to change for you to prioritize the areas of life that you want to focus on? How well does this tell you about what your next step might be? Look over how you describe the way you want to live in each of these areas of life. What might this tell you about your values? So when you think about setting the course for your value life journey or blazing a new trail, you need to choose which direction you want to go in. You might set your compass on that direction and then find reference points on a map to help ensure that you're still on track. You can use this as a metaphor for how you approach your values and goals. Values are the direction that you set your compass on. They'll guide you every step you take. If you wanted to hike north, you'd set your compass to point you northwards and periodically check that you're still heading in that direction. You don't ever actually reach north, but with each step, you are moving further north. Values work the same way as compass directions. You never actually attain them because there's always further you can go in the direction of your values. In this analogy, goals are like reference points that provide you with concrete tasks to accomplish. First, I'll head to that tree. Then maybe I'll go to that rock. Getting to the goals isn't the point of the journey. They function as guideposts to let you know you're still heading in the right direction. Often talking about values can feel overwhelming. We're talking about big things like what's most important to you and what can help you live a meaningful life. So it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed, but really all we're talking about here is making a small shift. As I said earlier, you're already valuing something by your actions. Everything you do is in the service of something. You're already on a journey. Values are about the direction you're heading in. What I'm talking about is making sure that all those steps you're taking are helping you move in the direction that is most important to you. Now it's your turn. Let's practice setting a course for your value life journey. Choose an area in your life you want to work on. This is the land you're journeying in. Pick one from the domains we just discussed, like friendships and social life, work or health and physical well-being. Then set your compass. Choose the value you want to move toward within that domain. This might be one of your top 3 values you identified earlier. For example, if your domain is friendships, your value might be being open and adventurous. Now for action. What could you do this week in your chosen domain to move toward your value? Identify a single concrete action you could take on a specific day or at a specific time. For example, if the area you are working on is parenting, would going to your kids' football match this weekend be in service of the value you'd like to move forward? How would you be at that match if you were embodying that value? If you're wanting to move towards a value of being open and adventurous within the domain of spirituality, will going on a new hike in nature be one step closer to that value? Think of 3 small concrete actions you could take this week. For each, imagine including the day and time you'll do it. The first thing that I could do this week to move toward this value. The second thing that I could do this week to move me toward this value. The third thing that I could do this week to move me toward this value. This will help you to establish concrete actions you can take this week. As you embark on this value-driven journey, you'll inevitably encounter challenges, especially from your own mind. There are powerful tools that can help us to reframe and to evaluate the automatic thoughts that pop into our minds. Unless you pay close attention, you might not be aware that they're even happening. These thoughts can be positive, negative, or neutral. They can also be biased. Not every thought we have is 100% accurate. Because your thoughts affect your feelings, biased or unhelpful thinking can contribute to emotional difficulties, such as anxiety and depression. Using a thought record can help you evaluate how accurate and helpful your thoughts are. So a thought record provides a step-by-step process for questioning and analyzing your negative automatic thoughts rather than taking them at face value. And with practice, this can improve your mood. This tool can help you identify your automatic thoughts, practice questioning these thoughts rather than accepting them as facts, correct unhelpful biases in your thinking, develop more balanced and helpful thoughts, which can reduce distress. So let's walk through how you can use a thought record. You can mentally practice this or grab a pen and paper to jot it down along with me. Okay, so the steps for using a thought record, we're going to start with the event. Think of a recent situation where you experienced a strong emotional or physical response. What was happening just before your feelings changed? Describe where you were and what you were doing. Events can be situations that occur in your life or things you noticed in your mind or body. For example, my partner has been sending a lot of messages on their cell phone all evening. The next step is around feelings. What emotions or body sensations did you feel at that time of the event? Try to be specific. Then rate the strength of those feelings on a scale of 0, no feeling, to 100, strongest imaginable feeling. For example, anxious, 60, jealous, 60, tense in my stomach, 40. Next, we're going to look at automatic thoughts. What thoughts or images did you experience in that moment? What was the thought which bothered you most? How much did you believe that most bothering thought? Again, on a scale of 0 to 100. For instance, she doesn't love me. She's going to leave me. Belief equals 70. Now, we're going to question and analyze as the next step. This is the core step. Explore your strongest automatic thought. Hold it lightly. Be curious. We're going to look at evidence for and against. So what is the evidence for your automatic thought? And what is the evidence against it? For example, if the thought is, she's going to leave me, evidence for that might be, we haven't been intimate for longer than usual, or other girlfriends have broken up with me in the past. Evidence against this thought could be, it's a busy time of year for her at work. It was like this last year. Or she came with me to watch football, even though she doesn't like it. Also, I'm ill with the flu, and being ill often makes me anxious and worried. Now we want to look at helpfulness. Is this a helpful thought to be having right now? For example, this thought isn't helpful. Focusing on it makes me feel bad and stops me from reaching out. And the next piece is the cognitive distortion. Can you identify any unhelpful thinking patterns or cognitive distortions in your automatic thought? For example, mind reading. I'm assuming I know what she thinks about me. Or personalizing. I might be taking her slow reply too personally. Then we want to look at the origin of the thought. Where does this thought come from? Does it sound like anyone from your life? For example, my childhood. Growing up, I often felt unwanted by my family. And then the next step is the friend's perspective. What would you say to a good friend if they were having this thought? For example, if I were speaking to a friend, I would kindly say that you're not feeling well, that she loves you, and maybe you're feeling paranoid. Fact or opinion? Is your thought or the evidence for it a fact or an opinion? The next step is the new thought. Based on what you have explored in the question and analyze section, what would be more accurate, balanced, or helpful in a way to view this event? Write a considered alternative to your automatic thought. How much do you believe this new thought on a scale of 0 to 100? For example, I'm ill. My partner and I have joked in the past about how when I'm not feeling well, I make up things. We haven't been intimate because I'm ill and gross. Of course, I worry because I've been hurt in the past and because she's important to me. Believe is rated as an 80 on this scale. Now, in the next step and the final step, we're going to look at feelings now. Reflect on your emotions and body sensations now. Has there been any improvement in how you feel after you've gone through all of these steps to explore your thought record and reframe and challenge and provide the evidence for or against the thought? Rate the strength of your feelings again. For example, I feel much calmer now. Anxious, 5. Jealous, 2. Calm, 60. Ill and gross, 80. Some helpful tips for using the thought record. If you struggle to think differently about an event, try shifting time. How will you think about the situation 1 year from now? Or try shifting mood. How have you thought about situations like these when you feel differently? If your new thought doesn't seem believable, try rephrasing it to make it more credible. Gathering more information can also strengthen new thoughts. For instance, you might try facing your fears or asking someone you trust for feedback. In the show notes, I'll include resources for you to complete your own thought records with a template. More in a minute.
The Reframing the Membrane Crossing Boundaries podcast is provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to replace professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor does it substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health clinician. Always consult your physician before deciding about your physical or mental health.
Moving toward your values inevitably means that you will face challenges, just as you might have to cross a stream or climb a mountain to keep traveling north. Sometimes these barriers will be physical or external things like injuries or major life changes. You may have a value around living boldly, but live in a culture or context where it would be unsafe for you to truly be yourself. These are real challenges that can impact how you are able to live out your values. However, while challenges like these may impact how you live out your values, they can't rob you of whether you can live out your values. When these real-world challenges show up, you might need some help from others. Trusted friends, family, or therapists can help you explore other ways to pivot so you can continue to move toward your values. Remember, always start from the assumption that you can live out your values here and now. Then you just need to figure out what that would look like in your current situation. So let's think about a few common barriers and potential solutions. One barrier could be that my values seem to be in conflict. Perhaps you value being reliable and committed at work, but also value being with your children, feeling pulled in different directions. The solution might focus on value integrity rather than perceived value conflicts. It sounds like you value being committed and reliable both at work and at home. There's often no real conflict here. In fact, there's a lot of consistency in your values. Instead, challenge is about figuring out how to balance the time you spend in different value domains. When you're focused on being reliable and committed at work, you can see that as practice for being reliable with your children at home. Focus on what's consistent between your values rather than where they seem to conflict. Another barrier might be, I feel worse when I move toward my values. You know you value intimacy but are too scared to trust people, or you want to live an open-hearted life but have too much anxiety. You might think you first need to become more confident. Then you can focus on living out your values. So a solution might look like increasing your acceptance because values and pain are intertwined. It makes sense that moving toward your values might make you experience more pain, but Turning away from the pain also means turning away from your values. To make valued living more sustainable, it may be helpful to work with someone who can help you develop acceptance and self compassion tools so that you can learn to stop struggling against your pain. Another barrier might be it's not safe for me to live out my value. You value being authentic, but living in that way might put you at risk in your current environment, perhaps culturally or socially. A potential solution could be not to give up on your value while you embrace what is workable. Living a life in line with your values is always possible. No matter where you are, you can always take a step towards your values. However, the ways of living out those values that are immediately available may depend on your current situation. Maybe your next step towards being authentic is being more open with certain beliefs rather than fully disclosing something that would be unsafe. Find the next step available to you that will move you towards your values and take that step. It may not be the step you ultimately most want to take, but it's a step on the journey. Another barrier could be I still don't know for sure what's most important to me, or I'm afraid I'll choose the wrong values. You might worry about changing your mind later. A solution may be to strengthen your diffusion capabilities. Our mind's job is to keep us safe, which means not making any mistakes. It makes sense that our minds often say things like, but what if you don't have it right? Or what if you're not sure? The problem is, a safe life isn't always the same as a meaningful life. While being physically safe is also important, we sometimes need to take a step back from our thoughts before we can take the next step. So, if you notice your thoughts getting in the way of taking action, it might be helpful to work on your diffusion skills. This may help you shift from striving for a life that's safe to one that's meaningful. And another barrier could be I'm not the kind of person who fill in the blank. You'd love to live a life where you were bold and adventurous, but you tell yourself that's not me. Or you like to value intimacy but believe other people just aren't trustworthy. So, a solution here might be to expand your perspective. We all have stories about ourselves and others. Sometimes these stories are helpful, but at other times they're limiting. So, if a story you have about yourself or the world is accurate, it's almost certainly not the whole story. By developing flexible perspective taking skills, we can open up to what is possible for us and others. These are just a few ideas to get you started. When you start encountering some of the barriers that are likely to show up as you start moving towards your values, it may be helpful again to work with someone like a therapist to help develop these psychological flexibility skills, including acceptance and diffusion and flexible perspective taking that will help you stay on course with your values when barriers arise. Often, when we think about setting goals, we only focus on what we're going to do. Our goals might be I'm going to exercise 3 times a week, or I'm going to call my mom every Sunday. The difficulty is that it's not always easy to tell whether these things are really moving you toward a value. Take a simple activity like sleeping as an example. Can you think of a time when sleeping could be about moving toward a value? Maybe going to bed early one day would be a way to help you care well for yourself. Maybe taking the time to nap on the couch with your cat would be in service of being loving or spending time with the important members of the family, including the four-legged ones. Now, can you think of any situations when sleeping would be about moving away from something you don't want? For example, if you're feeling really anxious about a big test at school or a meeting at work, you might keep hitting the snooze button and sleep through the whole morning to avoid having to face it, or you might feel so depressed that you can't even get out of bed. The same behavior, sleeping in this case, can be about moving you towards something that is important to you, or it can be about moving away from something you want to avoid. While trying to avoid things that are painful or difficult isn't always a bad idea, everyone does that from time to time because no one likes to feel pain. The more our lives become oriented around avoiding what we don't want, the less they're focused on what we do want, our values. So you may have even noticed this in your own life, and maybe that's part of the reason you're listening to this episode. Perhaps you found that you're spending so much energy trying to move away from the painful stuff that you've really lost sight of what it is you want to be moving toward. So, how do you know if you're making a toward move or an away move? Pause to check where you're heading. Ask yourself, is this about adding something meaningful to my life? Or is this about getting away from something painful? Many of us have an autopilot that steers us away from pain. By pausing to check which direction we're going, we're able to disengage that autopilot if it's no longer on course toward our values. How do you feel afterwards? Check how you feel after you complete the activity. If you feel proud, or if you like yourself a little more because you did it, that may be a sign that it's moving you toward your values. If you mostly feel relieved, that may be a hint that it was about moving away from something painful. Noticing pride versus relief doesn't always tell you whether something is a toward or away move, but it may give you a clue. Is your life getting bigger or smaller? If we can't have painful things in our life, our choices become narrower. When your behavior is about moving away from pain, you may notice a feeling of constriction, narrowing, or shrinking of your life. On the other hand, if you're focused on what you want to move toward, you're likely to feel a sense of expansiveness, freedom, or growing vitality. Checking in to see if your life feels like it's expanding or shrinking can give you a sense of whether you're moving toward your values or away from pain. The journey of living a value-driven life begins with small steps right where you are, exactly as you are. People often think they have to get somewhere, achieve something, or change something before they can start living out their values. But that's not how values work. Values, like directions, are always immediately available to you. No matter where you are, you can always take a step north toward them. No matter what your circumstances are, what you've done in the past, or what's been done to you, you can always take a step toward your values. That's really what living well is all about, taking a lot of small steps in the direction that's most important to you. No matter where you are, you can start that journey right now. Engaging with these exercises and insights, you've now taken important steps towards your values. Take a moment to pause and notice the time and effort you put into working through this episode. What was that effort in the service of? Maybe that step is the first of many that will shift the course of your life. Hopefully, you've been able to identify the next smallest step you could take to continue to explore and live out your values. It may involve working with therapists to help you develop some of the other psychological flexibility skills you might need to stay on course with your values. Remember, experiencing pain is a certainty. The choice is really whether you get to live a life that is meaningful and in line with what is most important to you, even while the pain is present. You might need to use every tool at your disposal to help you stay on course, but the choice is always up to you. Thank you for joining me on today's podcast. Until next time, keep finding your true north and living a life that truly matters.